All right, great. Well, once again, welcome everyone. It's great to see everyone here. Thanks for making the time for tonight for a very special presentation with Common Language Digital Storytelling Kitchen Table Nights. It's where we get together, we watch stories, we talk about them, and we glean wisdom from those stories that then we can take away and apply to our own lives. They're wonderful evenings, and tonight is a very special one because it is the North American premiere of a short documentary called A Shared Dream, Digital Storytelling to Support Gender Equality in East Africa. And man, I'm super excited to be here with y'all because, this documentary and the work of the Digital Storytelling Facilitator team in Uganda has been one of the things that I have loved about my life over the past 6 years, just being involved in the work that they've been doing over there. And yeah, and actually, believe it or not, some of that work has really led in part to the creation of Common Language. So a lot of you here have taken a digital storytelling training or been connected to Common Language in some way through digital storytelling. A lot of what I ended up doing by creating digital storytelling was stimulated by some of the work that I've done in Uganda. So for those of you who don't know who Common Language is, it's an organization I founded entirely dedicated to training people to be professional digital storytelling facilitators. And you'll sort of get to see tonight what that looks like on the, for most of us on the other side of the world, right? In East Africa and Uganda. It looks different than it does in North America. And that's why this is so cool, is we can learn from each other. There's going to be lots of ways that they do things in Uganda that's different than the way we do it here. But I think there's going to be lots of, hopefully, wisdom that we can glean from that story and apply to our own lives. So just before we jump right in to the video here, I just wanted to do a couple shout outs to people and organizations who really made this film happen. And the first one is Dr. Jen Brenner, who is the Dean of Indigenous Local Global Health Office at the University of Calgary in the Cummings School of Medicine. And in many ways, she's been the driving force, or at the very least, the stimulator of behind a lot of what we've done in Uganda, because she was the one who said, Mike, we should do digital storytelling in Uganda. And 6 years ago now, almost. And yeah, ongoing, getting grants, organizing connections, just doing it all. I actually don't know how she does it all, but Jen, thank you so much for all that you're doing to support this work and all that you have done. Second of all, we have to mention Teddy. And Teddy, unfortunately, if you watch this, I'm not going to try and say your last name because I'm sure I will get it very wrong. But Teddy is the manager of Healthy Child Uganda, and the organization that we're partnering with for this doc. She is one of the main contacts that helps everything happen whenever we do digital storytelling in Uganda. And next is Dr. Jerome, who is the director of Healthy Child Uganda and a close colleague of Dr. Brenner, and also the organization that he works for, Mbarara University of Science and Technology, where HU is based out of. Man, it's been such a wonderful partnership. I think going back 20 years or more than 20 years between the U of C and Mbarara University, Science and Technology. It's just really cool to get to piggyback off that with the digital storytelling program. And then I also wanted to mention all the different funders that we've had over the past 6 years of doing digital storytelling work. So the Canadian Partnership for Women and Children's Health, the Wellcome Trust in the UK funded some work. Global Affairs Canada has supported sort of peripherally some of the work. And of course, the University of Calgary have all been involved in some way to make sure that this important work we're doing, keeps going. And then finally, I have to mention all the people who helped put this film together. We have Phil Harrison, who's here, our director of photography. We have Christy Wolf, who ran second camera and some audio while we were filming. Evan, our editor with Road West Pictures, and of course the rest of the Road West Pictures team, which is like pretty much my favorite people to work with on anything like this. And then of course Sundis, who is the project coordinator at the University of Calgary for all the digital storytelling work in Uganda. So, man, as you can tell, there has been so many people involved in this work. But in many ways, tonight is actually a very big milestone for some particular people, and that is the stars of the show tonight. We have here Robens, Mutatina, who's going to be, we'll be talking with him afterwards. He is one of the digital storytelling facilitators on the Uganda team. We have Barbara Naggayi, who is just a wonderful person you will meet right at the beginning of the film, and you'll get to see her skills on display. And then, of course, Dr. Nima, who unfortunately may or may not be with us tonight, but hopefully, you'll be able to get a good sense of all the behind the scenes stuff that happened to make this film and some of the work that the Ugandan digital storytelling team is doing in east, southwest Uganda. So, sorry, southeast Uganda. No, southwest. Yes, southwest. Sorry, got confused there for a second. Anyways, we're gonna meet them in just a bit. But yeah, we're gonna watch a film in just a minute. But to set the stage, I sort of wanted to ask Dr. Nima a question, and I don't know if she's here yet. But if she isn't, I've got a bit of a question for you, Barbara. And if you can turn on your video and unmute yourself. If it doesn't work to turn on your video, no problem. But there you are. Hello, everyone. Wave hello to your video cameras that we can't see. It's great to see you, Barbara. Yes,
Hello,
it is 4 a.m. It is 4 a.m. where
yes,
Barbara is. Thank you for joining us, Barbara. And man, so the you guys have been using digital storytelling for all sorts of different things. But this one in particular is around the topic of gender and gender equity or gender equality. And so I know Dr. Nima, she's the senior lecturer in the Faculty of Gender Studies, right? So I was going to ask her this, but maybe I'll ask you just to help set the stage for us. What would be important, do you think, for people here in North America to know about gender relations in Uganda to help set the stage for the film that we're about to watch?
Well, like you said, Nema is the expert, but because I'm a woman,
Yeah.
This is also very, very important to
Mm-hmm.
me, especially in appreciating that men and women are not privileged the same,
Mm-hmm.
especially in our context.
Mm-hmm.
And so for us to be able to navigate through those limitations and constraints is very significant. It's a significant story to share. How does
Mm-hmm.
a woman surrounded so much of limitations manage to go through, sort of like bust the bubble and achieve their dream,
Mm-hmm.
is a significant story.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful piece of silence to break, and
Mm-hmm.
also to bring an understanding that there are things that we take for granted.
Yeah.
And so when you see men and women sharing the same space, it's not always easy.
Mm-hmm.
And there's always a backstory to the woman's agency. We normally use the word agency to express that, someone
Mm-hmm.
is trying to see themselves independently, move to that table, move to that space, occupy that space, and find relevance and express their relevance in that space. So gender equality for me means that and so much
Mm-hmm.
more. And that's
Yeah.
why I think it's important that our colleagues in North America are able to appreciate that women are really struggling to be able to situate themselves in that space and find meaning and bring out their relevance in that space where they share with the men.
Yeah. Great. Well, Barbara, that's wonderful to set the context for us, right? And I think, yeah, what you said, this is very much a part of the cultural conversation in Uganda, and I think that allows us to really sort of understand and maybe appreciate at a much deeper level what we're about to watch on screen. There's a lot of interesting things that happen that we will dig into a little bit afterwards. In addition to learning about digital storytelling and the way that you guys work and the way that you've developed your digital storytelling work over there. We'll learn a lot about that, but also hopefully we can talk a little bit about some of those gender equality issues that are at play in the film. So awesome, great. Okay, well, I think it's time for the show. I've done enough talking. We have lots of digital storytelling facilitators here in the room with us tonight, which is exciting. And I'm sure that they will have lots of questions for both of you, Barbara and Robens, afterwards. But just as a reminder to everyone else, as you're watching tonight, please just reflect on what resonates with you in the film. And any comments, thoughts, or feelings that you're having as you're watching the film, feel free to put it in the chat. We can talk a little in the chat while we're watching, but definitely afterwards. We'll do our best to get to all those comments and questions in our conversation with the facilitators afterwards. So please be actively involved in the conversation tonight. I think that will make it even more meaningful for everyone here. So all right, here we go. There we go. A shared dream. One of the things you saw everyone doing in the story, but we like to do this, after you watch a good story. And so yeah, Barbara, Robens, this to you, right? Yeah, some people are turning on their videos just so they can do that as well. So great. Awesome. Great, man. Well, all right, there we go. Look there's all these people. Oh, everyone's saying hi. All right. So I'm going to start with just a couple questions, but as you guys are sitting there, if there's anything that stood out to you, please put it in the chat. If you have any questions in particular for Barbara or Robens, please put it in there, and we will make sure that we raise those. But Robens, where are you? I need to bring you in here. We haven't had a chance to talk to Robens yet. We got to start with a question to you because, one of the things I really liked about the videos at the end, your final interview, and we can only put in just a couple minutes, seconds. We put in a couple seconds of that final interview, but I could like feel your excitement. It's like you were so excited about digital storytelling in that moment, and then you say, if anyone can do this, you should, because it's such a great methodology. So anyways, I love that. I love to see your excitement in that moment. And so I guess the question is, what was your favorite part of that whole experience working with Nancy? And then I would take it a little further. What's your favorite part of being a digital storytelling facilitator? What do you enjoy most about what you do?
Thank you, Mike and Tim. I think my favorite part working with people to create their stories is the excitement that you see on the face of those people after they have managed to put out their story in a way that is very compelling and in a format that can be shared with very many people through different platforms so that they can also learn from their lived experience. I think for me, that is the most exciting part of this digital storytelling, mainly the product of digital storytelling. Thank you.
Yeah, watching it at the end. And I mean, that's maybe why you're so excited in that final interview, and you could literally through the camera lens feel your excitement in that moment. So what about I mean, you're one of the people who is involved in the most diverse ways, I guess, right? Often Robens is I would call the story coordinator. He connects with people, he schedules them, he works with them on the crafting as well. And so you sort of seen many contexts in which digital storytelling has been used with Healthy Child Uganda. So, maybe you could just share with us some of the ways that the Ugandan team has been using digital storytelling in the other projects that you've been working on. Because we just got to see one little glimpse here, and you guys have made over 60 stories now, and using them for all sorts of different purposes. So tell us a little bit about some of your favorite projects and where you're using digital storytelling.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. As head researcher in Uganda, here in Uganda, and specifically at Feburary University of Science and Technology, we have used digital storytelling in different ways, different projects. But mainly, if I'm single to this one, we use digital storytelling for engagements and engagements at different levels. It can be local, at the community level, district level, even at the national level. And the project where we have used digital storytelling so much is the project which we have been recently implementing, a project called Healthy Adolescents and Young People. before we started implementing this project, as SW Uganda, we have been implementing other projects targeting other age groups, for example, mothers and the children, and their challenges are very obvious. They can be seen by anyone. But when we started implementing the health adolescents and young people, to us and some other people in the community, the districts, the health workers, it was very abstract. Why should we think about young people? But not until we captured the lived experience of the young people, things that they are going through, their challenges, and visualized them using digital storytelling, very many people could connect and appreciate the challenges that are affecting the young people. So I must say that using digital storytelling helped us to create the demand for this new project we have been implementing, the health adolescents and young people, because of the compelling nature in the stories that we have been able to create and share with the communities. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I remember Teddy telling me once that she just shared a digital story at one engagement with sort of a higher up health official, and that's all she needed to do. After sharing one story, they started talking about what they were going to do to support adolescents and young people, and you didn't even have to present much data. You didn't have to do much to get them excited about the work that you were doing, and so that really stood out to me when Teddy told me that. It shows sort of the power of hearing, right, directly from people that have lived it, right? And then you don't really have to think too abstractly, like you said, when you hear it straight from that young person. So very cool. I mean, there's so many other ways, lots of stories. Maybe we'll mention one or two other ones as we go tonight. Also, I have gleaned a few fun anecdotal stories from you guys over the years. And I think sometimes you're a little modest when it comes to talking about the impact of the work that you've done, right? So really quickly, before I head over to Barbara here, I just wanted to, there's some great comments in there. From Jen. Hi, Jen. Thanks so much. The stories behind the scenes she mentioned, such an important story. It was beautifully done. I love the feedback and responses from the audience. I think that's one thing we should mention is that conversation with the students was an hour and 15 minutes. And we put in like 3 or 4 minutes, right? Every single one of those students stood up and said something, and some of them multiple times, and so it was just really cool. I know Christy was there filming, and I was just in the background with the audio running around the room with the microphone. And man, it was just fun to be a part of, right? To see how engaged people were in those moments. And yeah, Sandy said, I loved how they sat, listened, and shared in community with each other. Yes, great comment, Sandy. Yeah, over 60 stories, Jen. Small team, but very resourceful, right? We've been able to do a lot with the stories. And yeah, great. Well, so Barbara, I'm going to head over to you. If anyone has any questions, please put it in the chat. Type it in the chat, and we'll make sure that you have a chance to ask them there. Just because we are recording this, we're going to make sure that we ask all the stuff that people put in the chat. So Barbara, it's hard to know where to start talking about you, but this is the first one that everyone says when they watch the film. Everyone says, how did Barbara get everyone to finish the end of her sentences in that way? It's like, how did she do that? So Barbara, I mean, that's like an amazing skill. Tell us more. Is this something you do in a lot of your classes? Because you're a lecturer at the university. Like tell me a bit more about that part of it, the way the students finished your sentences.
Mike, I do not know. I don't know. I don't know how that happens, but maybe it's also part of my relationship with Healthy Child Uganda started as someone being trained in facilitation skills.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And perhaps that's the background to it. And yeah, I think that's it. The training facilitation skills perhaps enhances what naturally comes of me.
Yeah,
Maybe.
skills that you have. You know what I like about that comment, right? Is there's all these different things that build on each other, and every facilitator brings their own unique skills that they've maybe gleaned from other projects to this project. And so we're going to talk more about that in a second. But I think the other question people have is, it seems like the students were really engaged in that conversation. And so, you're a lecturer at the university, you teach lots of classes there. what was that conversation like with those students that we saw in the film compared to sort of your average sort of educational context, the classrooms that you teach in? How does it compare, the two discussions?
I think just like Robin said, this is a lived experience. It's not something abstract. They are not listening to something abstract. They are listening to somebody's real life experience, and this person is bringing a certain meaning to something that they experience in their own lives. They may be different contexts, different settings, but they experience something similar. So there is something that they resonate with as the person shares that story.
Mm-hmm.
So because of that connection, like we normally say in our community of digital storytelling, that stories connect people. People connect through stories.
Mm-hmm.
So as they listened, as they watched, and I guess there was something that everybody in that room could pick or connect to the story. So it was very easy to to find some bits and parts of Nancy's experience being made alive. Finally, someone being able to speak to that particular aspect that they have not, they themselves in the audience haven't spoken about, but now they have the privilege of hearing somebody speak about it. So it's like you've held a secret within you for a long time, and you're wondering, how am I going to speak about it? What kind of meaning can I attach to this particular experience? And then you finally hear someone speak about it and bring out a certain understanding.
Yeah.
So you feel there's a lot of emotion, empathy. You sort of feel like, oh, finally I get somebody who understands what I'm going through. Finally I get to hear someone who has gone through what I have gone through. There's an inspiration for somebody to say, okay, I am not the worst of the worst. This is not the worst that can happen to me. So I really love digital storytelling because it brings alive that which is abstract.
Yeah.
And people are able to connect to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess that is why everybody in the room was able to have something to say.
Yeah, everyone. Yeah,
Especially both boys and the girls. And
girls.
especially in our university setting. Yeah, in our university setting, it's very common to have relationships coming up and ladies trying to navigate some of those tricky or complex situations. You heard of a gentleman talk about ladies coming to their rooms to wash their clothes, wash their cups and so on, just to as a survival mode, But now they are hearing somebody who is able to navigate that complexity and still come out strong without necessarily going down that drain. So it's beautiful. It's really beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, one thing that really stood out to me as we were editing that part of the documentary, and we watched through that a lot, was how many people stood up and said, that I connect with this because that was me. Right? I think we kept 3 of them in the documentary where one guy says that was me, but he was talking about the way Nancy their family sold everything so she could go to school, right? And then another girl got up and said that was me, but she was talking about sort of the relationship side of things, right? And man, I think that really highlights what you said, is that it makes these abstract things real, and then it allows people to actually have these conversations, right? Like no one would ever get up and talk about gender roles sitting in the cafeteria, or even in gender studies classes. There might be some difficult ways to talk about things, right? But through the story itself, people can then talk about the story. And one of the things I love is when people talk about the story, what they're really talking about is themselves. When they talk about what resonates with them in the story, they're talking about their own experiences. And it's a way to start conversations that need to be had that are sometimes hard to start. Yeah. Yeah.
And talk about stories, talk about an experience in an environment where there's less judgment. you know.
Yeah.
That's also very important that you're speaking from the place where you are comfortable, and there's less there's a less judgment. You're able to identify with someone,
Yeah.
and so the screening phase of digital storytelling is important for breaking that barrier of a judgmental kind of environment, because it's that judgmental kind of environment that stops people from speaking,
Yeah.
and keeps the secrets underneath, which doesn't create liberation. We need to be liberated.
Yeah.
Some
Liberate,
people are
have those
healed because
conversations.
they're able to
Yeah.
speak.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Awesome. Oh, it's great comments, Barbara. I think you did there's a good transition there, right? The sharing the story phase, right? And so one of the very unique things about the team in Uganda that I think we definitely need to talk about is there's sort of this made in Uganda approach to digital storytelling facilitation that's different than what I've seen pretty much everywhere else in the world. And that's, you guys have chosen to do a team-based approach, right? So Nima is the finding telling facilitator, right? So she helps people find the stories and write it down. Robens is sort of the crafting facilitator, right? He helps draw out the emotions with the images and things like that, and helps them come up with metaphors. And we'll talk about that in a second, Robens. And then Barbara, you are the sharing person, right? Because of your facilitation skills. And so, I actually, I'll throw this out to Robins first, but then Barbara, feel free to chime in here. How did you guys sort of end up at that place? And I mean, I sort of got to see the evolution there of how you ended up with the team-based approach. But just for everyone here, what did that end up looking like? So, Robins, how did we end up with this team approach?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think the reason why we ended coming up with that team approach, I think it is because of the different skills among the members, the digital storytelling facilitators. We thought we could do it best if we divided roles according to what each facilitator is good at, and it is working out very well. And yeah, and also it adds another flavor, like complement each other, support each other, and with a team, everything is possible. Yeah, I think we can only do it better if we work as a team, and quality assurance. Yeah, that's why we have managed to come up with good stories. Yeah.
Yeah, so quality assurance, that's really interesting to think about it that way too, right? When you have multiple people looking at a story and being involved in its production, there's lots of different ways that you can sort of complement each other and bring out the things that you're best at. Barbara, how did you end up as the sharing facilitator?
Well, I guess, like Robin said, I guess finding yourself in the team, identifying what you can, what value you bring to the team, and for me, I thought that was my best place. The other reason, of course, because we're dealing, majority of the storytellers we were working with are from the rural environment. And so they were speaking, I mean, Dr. Neema is very good at the local language, the Runyankore Chiga, which I am not. So it would be very difficult for me to facilitate the finding and telling of that phase.
Yeah.
But it would be easy for me to facilitate the screening of that story, even if it was told in Runyankore Chiga. So some of those things, being honest with ourselves as a team, but also identifying our strengths, our points of strength, and how we can use those to be able to create something beautiful.
Yeah. I loved it. Like, it was something I was not expecting when I first went over there. I think it was almost 6 years ago now, right? I assumed we would be doing things the way that we've done them in North America. And one of my favorite parts about this whole partnership has been the new ways of thinking about digital storytelling, the new ideas that have been brought to the table. Yeah, it's just super fun, you know, and you know, now we're working on, just for everyone here, we're actually working on a digital storytelling guide and facilitator training. So you know, lesson plans. We're going to be using this film. We're sort of working on things. Christy and Barbara and Robens and I met, and we're working on this guidebook and these lesson plans. And man, it's just really cool to look at all the different examples now that we can put into the guidebook about how to do things in sort of in East African context in Uganda, but hopefully now moving out to other countries in East Africa to give them the skills to do what you guys are doing. I think that's just super exciting for me to see. It's expanding now beyond, you know, our original partnership, right? We'll get to a couple last questions here, but just really quickly, a couple comments there. Nancy, Christy said Nancy shared a lot after the audience discussion, which is true. In there, we only had literally like 30 seconds of Nancy speaking, but she spoke for like 20 minutes probably, and she got very emotional and very passionate. And it was sort of cool to see how impacted she was by watching other people learn from her life. And you know, it's one of the things we talk about as facilitators, right? Affirmation through audience engagement. After she heard every student stand up and say what they learned from her story, she was very emotional and very excited about it. So it comes back to one of the comments that was made by Amina. Or actually, I'm scrolling back here, see if Mina, she was talking about how, you know, sort of the ethical aspects of digital storytelling. You know, she gets to tell the story in her own words, but also shares her vision of what the story should look like. Great job. And then she said, one of the best parts of this documentary is getting to see the process as well as the product. And and then there was another comment about sort of the ethical practice, right? People are a part of this entire process from start to finish. And that's what makes it, I think, really cool. A couple other really great comments here. Anne mentioned, you know, that this was a great example of civil discourse, which is so true. And, you know, we've forgotten how to have conversations in our society now. Like around the world, people just like shouting at each other. It's hard to have a conversation, a meaningful conversation in lots of ways. And so this was such a great example of how you can use a story to have a civil discourse, to start a conversation about a sensitive topic. And I tell you that, and maybe I'll ask you guys in a second, the Ugandan team has created some very sensitive stories that have started some very complex and very compelling conversation. So anyways, a great one there. Justice had a great point. And Jen responded, there are difficult topics here, but there's things that never get discussed, right? Gender-based violence, HIV/AIDS, early pregnancy, mental health, addictions, all those things are so hard to talk about. And digital stories created by the team, the Ugandan team, have been used to successfully have real discussions and create action in communities. And so, man, it's so cool to get sort of that sort of positive affirmation of the difficult stories leading to meaningful conversations. So, so we've got so many more things we can talk about. We're running out of time here. Barbara and Robens, I have just a couple more questions for you. First of all, Robens, I'll go to you first. You never really answered my question of what is your favorite part of the film? So what is it? What's your favorite part of the film, in particular of when you're working with Nancy? And this is where I'm forcing you to be less modest. What did you love about when you were working with Nancy?
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. What I loved most about when I was working with Nancy is that much as I was facilitating or supporting as the crafting facilitator, she still had the power to determine the content or everything to be incorporated in her story. Like most of the things, for me, I was just there directing or putting things together, but she still had the power to direct what she really needed in the story so that it can bring out what she was feeling at that moment. That's what I loved about that one. So as a facilitator, it is always important to give the power to the storyteller so that she can determine the direction of her story.
Yeah, and there's a couple great examples in there. One of them is she's like, let's use a bridge, because it can help you get to the other side. She's talking about the bridge of education in that moment, right? And the other metaphor I love that you guys did in the story was the lock, right? And I don't know if everyone saw this, but there's the lock at the beginning, and then the lock is unlocked, but it's still hanging on the gate, and then at the end it's broken completely and laying on the floor, right? And it sort of shows her inner emotional experience, right? That throughout that trajectory. And I thought you guys did a really wonderful job with that. And so, Robins, when you think about crafting the story, what's one of the biggest things that you've learned over the past 6 years that has helped you craft, with the crafting phase of the stories? What's one of the biggest lessons that helps you when you work with people?
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. With crafting stage, I think some of the things which I've learned and which are now very helpful is the metaphors.
Metaphors. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, the metaphors, yeah, they are so compelling. They send the viewers on the journey of reflection,
Mhm.
uh, whereby, it is so very good to find that a story is said in 3 minutes, but the visuals which you have put there can expand the thinking or the scope of the story to more than 3 minutes, like in
Yeah.
the story which you have just watched. Uh, Away from the words which she says, but seeing the visuals which she selected to be part of her story, they can expand the scope of what she's saying. So I think using metaphors has been some of the most important thing. And recently, what we just learned is the image systems.
Mm.
Like how you started the image system of using the lock, as Mike said, at first the padlock was locked, later it was open, then at the end it was broken. It just creates a journey, and yeah, it shows like how things were moving from one stage to the other. You know how we are creating a story. We have this story mountain. This is how things started, how they escalated, reached the peak, and here is the relief. As you have seen, most of the digital story they are restitutional. Their
Mhm.
stories about situations which have been overcome by the storyteller. So I think that the metaphors and the image systems, they can be very helpful in the crafting stage of the story.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and it's been really fun to watch sort of the team's process from being very literal, right? In the way that you were telling stories to now you have this whole world at your disposal to help people tell meaningful stories. You have bridges and paths and locks and there's so many the tunnel, right? There's so many great moments in Nancy's story that were brought out through the images that you helped her choose. So it's very cool. Well, Barbara, same thing for you. What was your favorite part about your role in the film? What did you like most about your part of the film?
One, I enjoyed having a participatory group audience. Um, very engaging, very
Mm.
engaging. But also, for the first time, I had the storyteller in the
Mm-hmm.
room.
Yeah.
And I think that was very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Powerful, I think, for the storyteller, for her to be able to hear what people have to say about her story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And also to get to hear her emotion about that feeling after the whole screening exercise. So
Mm-hmm.
for me, I think the engagement we had, the fruitful, free-spirited, like Anne says it, civil discourse,
Mm-hmm.
um, that was powerful for these young people to be able to come out and have connection with that story. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why I keep telling our team, that the process of making the story is as valuable as the final product, which is the story. Because if the story is not well produced to bring out that compelling effect, then screening, the impact that we are looking out for at the screening phase will not come out. Because at the end of the day, we don't just share stories for the sake of sharing stories. We want that our story is shared, and then it triggers some form of action, triggers some reflection, triggers some behavior change. So if the story is not properly done, if the process is not well done, then we cannot have that effect of the story. So the process is as good, is as valuable as the final product. For me to have a successful screening, we need to have a very good and quality process for the making of that story.
Awesome. I love it. Right. And that's a great final word I would say about why it's important that we are, we talk about being dedicated to the craft, and there's lots of facilitators here, right? Who, we got to continue to be better at what we do and continue to improve, just like you guys have over the past 6 years. It's been incredible to see the stories from year one to the stories that we just watched one with Robens and you last Friday, and me and Christy were just blown away. We're just like, yes, this is amazing. And just that whole arc of your guys' skills, I just see huge things in the future for all the stories that you make, because like you said, the process, we've really done a good job at developing the process, and you guys now have this great process that you use and how you work together, right? So awesome. Well, man, there's so many more things we could talk about here, but I think I will share one. I would like to share one little story if I can, because every once in a while, I go over to Uganda and you guys just tell a story, and I'm just like, oh man, like we should be telling this to everyone. And I think there's a couple of digital stories that have had huge impact. I think one of them was a guy named Kenneth. And I got to read through his interview transcript that you did with him. And he talked about how he took his USB key to all the TVs in his community. And when people were around, he'd plug it in and he'd say, let's watch a story about maternal and child health. And then everyone would, as soon as they heard his voice on the TV, they would get quiet. And sometimes he said he would take it to the bars and play it during soccer games and the commercial breaks. Sometimes he'd be in people's houses, like of people that had their own TV. And I just love that as an example of how these stories can be used in so many different ways to start meaningful conversation, right? And Kenneth talked about how he would have great conversations with a room full of men about child and maternal health, after watching his story. So that was one that really stood out to me. It shows sort of the little ways. The other one that I'm going to share is I got to go to a screening. And we watched a story about a child who was thrown away by its mother, but then raised by the community with the help of village health teams, which is a big part of what Healthy Child Uganda has done over the years, is work, create these village health teams. And at the end of that screening, an elder in the community stood up and he just started, just really giving her in the local language, I didn't know what was happening. And I leaned over to one of the Healthy Child Uganda team, Claire. I said, Claire, what's going on? What's he saying? And she started translating for me. And I got very emotional because he was saying things like, this is a child of Uganda and we take care of our children. And as a community, we support each other, and the village health teams can help us do that. And he was just like basically telling everyone, look, it doesn't matter whose child it is. We're all responsible for the health of the children in our community. And I thought it was such a cool thing that I wish we would hear more of in North America, right? Those types of conversations happen. So anyways, those are just two little stories of the moments, this very small moments that I got to be a part of in Uganda. And Christy and I also got to go watch a debate on gender equity that was stimulated by Dr. Nima's story. We watched one of her stories, and then there was this debate, and me and Christy were just watching, but it was very lively debate also. And so, there's so many different ways to use these stories. I think we could probably tell like 20 more of them, but I think it's about time now to wrap up. So, a couple of last things here. And as I'm saying these last things, we have a common language tradition where we share one word, how we're feeling right now in this moment after having been a part of this conversation. So please, in the chat, type in there one word that stands out to you about how you're feeling right now in this moment. And as you do that, if you're interested in learning more about digital storytelling facilitation, you can just go to commonlanguagedst.org. And there's also a page there about the partnership if you want to see. Also, you know, I already told you about the training guide that we're doing. That's being funded by the Canadian Partnership for Women and Children's Health, CanWatch. So we really appreciate their partnership with us to help take digital storytelling to other countries around East Africa. And then finally, you know, just thanks to all of you guys for being here, right? I mean, you're all here on a Monday night, and for Barbara and Robens at 4 a.m. in the morning. You know, I always say the people that show up for things like this are the type of people I wanna hang around. I wanna be with these people, right? Because they're the ones that value stories and are telling stories that can help change the world. And I think we've seen that in lots of different ways in southwestern Uganda over the past 6 years. And I just wanted to say thank you, especially to Barbara and Robens and Dr. Nima, who's not here, as the core facilitation team, and of course, Dr. Manasseh and Dr. Richard, all the other people involved, Justice, who's also been involved, who's on the call here tonight. Man, it's just been so inspiring to watch you guys work, and I can't wait to see where things go from here. So we got some words here. We got inspired, connected, inspiring, grateful, thoughtful, enriched, respectful, thoughtful, thank you, appreciated. Yeah, I think I'm going to say, I'm going to use a very Canadian word, stoked. I'm very stoked for the future, which basically means like more than excited. So I'm stoked about the documentary and also just where things are going in southwestern Uganda. So again, thank you all for being here. Let's do one more for Barbara and Robens. Thank you so much. The stars of the show. This is just the beginning. I can't wait to see where things go from here.